Welcome to the Three Wise Men of Divorce, Money, Psych, and Law podcast. Sit down with the California divorce experts, financial divorce consultant Mark Hill, psychologist Scott Weiner, and attorney Shawn Weber for a frank and casual conversation about divorce, separation, co-parenting, and the difficult decisions real people like you face during these tough times. We know that if you are looking at divorce or separation, it can be scary and overwhelming. With combined experience of over 70 years in divorce and conflict management, we are here for you and look forward to helping by sharing our unique ideas, thoughts, and perspectives on divorce, separation, and co-parenting.
Well, it's that time of year. We've recovered from the glow of the new year. Although people still say New Year's, Happy New Year's to me. I don't know why. We're into February now.
Well, we got another glow coming up.
But we have another glow coming. You can just tell by what's in the stores because everything's pink and red and hearts everywhere.
Oh, there's so much love going on.
But, when we were talking about how the new year can be sometimes a trigger for folks in one of our last podcasts, can be a trigger for folks to maybe make a New Year's resolution to end their marriage. Mark, you pointed out that you've noticed in your practice that the day after Valentine's Day can sometimes be a day.
Yeah, and I think it's a sort of a symptom of something that can, be a larger sort of group of triggers around not just things like Valentine's Day, but birthdays and anniversaries and things that we sort of look at on an annual basis, and it's the way we chart the passage of time. And I think that it can become triggering to people because they think, well, this one sucked. I don't want another one like this. And I'm going to do something about it. And Valentine's Day has been one of those things. I have seen a little blip in my practice after the 14th where we get a few calls. And I often wonder if that's because of some failure on behalf of a spouse during that period.
Well, it can be
also it becomes rather notable to people. Some of the expectations that they have around Valentine's Day or other ostensibly positive kinds of things. And it's sort of like, you know what? It's like ice cubes, They realize that it almost is an inflection point at which time they notice that things aren't so great. And then all of a sudden, the wise men of divorce are in business,
Yeah, right. And it could be, I got to say, these things are not ever happening in a vacuum. So it's not like he didn't bring the right roses one day and then all of a sudden there's a divorce in the works. It's usually a culmination. It's leading up to someone not paying attention for a long period of time. And the marriage is probably sick already, right?
It's the final straw that breaks the camel's back, right?
Yeah.
And if that's not true, if it really is just all of a sudden out of nowhere, then that's diagnostic too,
What do you mean by diagnostic? Wait.
Well, in other words, let's say everything seems to be going really well by all, for all intents and purposes, people are doing well. And then one little blip happens, at a holiday or a Valentine's, and somebody makes that into a federal case, then the federal case isn't really the blip, You're just all of a sudden you've turned over the stone of reality and discovered that, oh my Lord, this person is really berserk, So, but anyway, here we are, and it's February the 2nd, 2021, this new year. And,
as of the date of this recording. I mean, when we release
that's
right.
It'll
be
later.
It'll be closer to Valentine's
Day. And I'm
Day.
sure for time immemorial, people will be, poring over this, reading these transcripts. But
it is ironic because today, as we record this, it's Groundhog's Day. And I think of that film, and I've had so many people tell me my marriage is like Groundhog's Day.
Oh,
and
my
it's
goodness.
the same crap every day. And I got to break the cycle. Right?
Or Bill Murray waking up, huh?
Oh, I love that movie. And he like,
me too.
I like the part where he's killing himself every day.
Yes.
He brings a toaster into the bathtub with him.
I like the part where he just kind of sloughs everybody off on his morning walk. It's like he's not got the time and the patience to do the niceties. I think he just like
he's got work to do.
He gives a right hook to somebody who's really frustrated him at some point, as I recall.
Yeah, right.
And we discover it doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so people want to break a cycle, right?
Yeah. And the trigger can be many things, but, I think that the concept of Valentine's Day has been pushed to such a degree to be an indication of how much we care for our partners. And I think that there's I can say from a personal standpoint, I approach it from oh my gosh, I have to do something and I have to get it right. And so I'm thinking ahead of time, about planning for it, because otherwise it's the 13th and I'm running over to the drugstore to get a card and thinking, what the hell else can I do?
A box of Whitman samplers and
exactly. So I think that irrespective of whether it's an event like an anniversary or a birthday or Valentine's, any of these can be triggering events, but it's unusual, as you say, Shawn, that this to be something that comes out of the blue. You should have seen it coming if that is what triggered it. Now, so our position in Pacific Divorce Management is no one takes a vacation in the last 2 weeks of February.
Yeah. So then here you go. So we February can be a trigger month.
Sure it can.
And okay, so most of the people that are listening to this program are already in the throes of their divorce. Or they're thinking about it. Maybe they want to get some more information. Sure. They're just about there. So what does this teach them?
I want to respond to something Mark said about they should have seen it coming. It's like, I think what really happens to people is they even if they do see it coming, it is so disheartening to see it coming that they look away. And then ironically or paradoxically or even pathetically, something like this, like a bad holiday will trigger the beginning of the end. That, I never blame people for wanting to give it a try and for hoping and for wishing for, it's hard to be married and to stay married and to work it through. And a lot of marriages end for the reason that it just can't keep going. And as Shawn, as you say, a lot of these people that are listening to us, they're contemplating I just don't think that they should feel bad about not having acted on it sooner, unless it's the circumstance where somebody really is being foul to the other person. And then it's like, well, what do you do with that?
Well, a lot of times these events, a bad anniversary, a bad Valentine's, they become inflection points for people then to make a decision. So what should people be thinking about if they're at an inflection point and they're deciding, do I pull the trigger or not? Do I get the divorce or don't I get the divorce? What should be they thinking about if that's something they're trying to make a decision about?
Boy, is that tough. Right? What should they be thinking of? I mean, well, I would want to convey to the people who are listening to this that so many times when our group of people get people that are at that point, that in good faith, we do ask them these things, and we do ask them, have they tried to counsel their way through? Have they tried to deal with this? It's like, we do that. I mean, I get those referrals from you guys, and it's like sometimes yes, sometimes no. But there are times when there is an intractable problem. If somebody is serially disloyal in one way or another, if somebody really is abusive, frankly, substance abuse is a big deal too. You know, it tends to wind up running the relationship. And, you know, kids are involved, the dangers are involved. You know, what should they be thinking of? What should they be thinking of? Is it worth trying? Is there something that I can do to make this actually work? And hence it really wouldn't be worth blowing it apart, you know? But I'm going to make the assumption that if somebody's thinking about this, most people are thinking about these things. They're thinking about it. They may be so emotionally overwrought by this time that they've almost fallen into a condition of confusion. And I think sometimes you get those calls, and you do too, Mark, you know?
And I think sometimes by the time they get to me, they're almost in a state of financial paralysis. I don't know what I would get. I don't know how this would work. How will we be able to afford everything? Will I be living under an underpass? Will I have to work until I'm 80? How would the kids get educated? What's going to happen, you know, to my beautiful home? Those kind of things can often prevent somebody from moving forward because they're scared and they don't know where to get that sort of information without initiating a process.
You know, Mark, you and I share the same business advisor, and she's always telling me, you know, why can't you just have a formulaic process for when you bring these people in? Why are they taking so long to decide? And I think the answer really is that people call and they don't know, do I pull this trigger or not? And there's a process that people go through when they decide to do this. And I've noticed a couple of themes. Number one is, and I've said this before in this program, the decision to divorce is very similar to the decision to get back surgery. You know, you would not do the back surgery unless the pain that you're in right now is worse than the pain that you're going to be in. Notice I didn't say might be in. You will be in pain after the back surgery. And so you have to make this decision. What's going to be worse? And sometimes people miscalculate that. And then they have the back surgery and they find, oh my gosh, I'm in worse pain than I was before. And that can happen with divorce. So you do want to think about this. Is it worse on the other side or better on the other side? Now, we're in the business of teaching people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and that there is another side and life does continue. But before you pull that trigger, you want to really think about that. And then the other thing I've noticed, and maybe Mark, you've seen this, and Scott, a lot of times people think that the solution to their sorrow or their whatever the funk that they're in is to get rid of the other person. But maybe it's to work on yourself a little bit.
You know, thinking of your analogy about back surgery, I had a couple of spinal surgeries many years ago.
Me too.
And I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a thoracic surgeon, and his comment was, you know, the thing about back surgery is they never cut on you once. The exact words he used. And divorce is a bit like that, because it's not one day, it's not an event, it's a process.
It's a process, yeah.
And it's a painful process because it's a process where you're going to, at best, cut your assets in half and walk away with half of how you perceive yourself to be financially positioned today. Also, you're going to have to renegotiate a relationship with your spouse, especially, well, maybe not, but if you have children, you will need to.
For sure.
So, and that's an ongoing situation. So it's kind of like back surgery with, you know, tune-ups along the way until you get to a position where we have the marital settlement agreement and we have everything done and you are divorced. And even after that, there may be things that you need to revisit from a financial standpoint if you have a complicated situation that can't be resolved 100% by agreeing everything that will happen in the future in your agreement.
Well, I do think, and the other piece, you know, that I was kind of alluding to is being clear about what the source of your sadness is. Is it really this other person? Or is there something you need to work on with yourself? I had this client years ago. He was one of my serial monogamists. And I think I did 4 divorces for him.
Oh, Lord.
And by the fourth one, he said, you know what, this is the last marriage. I said, well, why are you saying that? Don't you want to go for number 5? You know, it'd be a record. And he said, well, I realized that I have all these terrible relationships, but there's one constant in all of these relationships, right. And it's me. Yeah. You know, I'm like, oh, if I could have, I saw that with the second divorce, you know, for him. But he kind of reached this realization. And I often tell my divorcing couples, before you get into the next relationship, it might be a good idea to get some personal therapy just to clear up any issues so that so that you don't marry the same person again or go into the same situation.
There's that Scott. One. There's the other one, which is the person who will report to you, I've discovered that my picker, the chooser in me is broken. You know, there's something wrong with how I go about selecting. And again, as you say, marrying the same person again, so to speak, or even literally. And
we've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where we wind up here is a couple of things. First of all, something that ostensibly is positive and nice and lovely can be a precipitant, such as Valentine's Day. And second of all, really the larger question that we've landed on is, how do you really decide? How do you decide whether to go forward or not? And I just think that is downright, frankly, profound.
Yeah. Well, but like any decision, I've always felt that the more information you can gather, the smarter the decision you have an opportunity to make. So getting an understanding of your financial circumstances so that it's not a shock when you have to move to a 2-bedroom apartment from the 6-bedroom home on an acre that you're living in.
Okay. Financially, I believe I am certain you're correct. If you have more information, you know, at least you can wind up feeling more secure about deciding what's going to be.
And I think that's a part of it, is that, you know, I think people have opposing tendencies. Well, we've always had enough money. It's going to be fine. But I don't want to look at the details. Oh my gosh, it's going to be awful. I'm terrified of it. I don't want to look at the details. Okay. And they're the flip side of the same coin. You're moving forward in the dark. You will be more fearful under any circumstance. And
you won't have the details.
And fearful people don't make good decisions, in my experience.
Yeah. And on the other side of the coin is angry people don't make good decisions.
Right.
And sometimes I fear somebody gets angry about something, sometimes for very good reason they're angry. And then they rush out to hire their divorce attorney because they're angry.
A colleague I work with has a little thing below the signature that says, speak when you're angry and you will make the best speech you will ever regret.
Yeah, I mean, people kind of lose their crap, and then decision making becomes a little skewed. And so I always say, okay, if you're making a decision like whether to divorce your spouse out of a place of anger, how likely is it that that decision is going to be a rational choice? So you know, do whatever you can to manage that anger. Get to a place where you're not angry anymore and you're thinking clearly and rationally. And then do your analysis. I mean, what do you think, Scott?
That's better if that can happen. But I am struck with the history that I've seen of people who they can't make a decision when they're not angry for sometimes for very reasonable reasons, because the person has just done the next infuriating thing that is out of this world, impossible. Now, I realize that's more the exception than the rule, but Shawn, we've done a couple of cases where the next preposterous, and I'm not going to use Anglo-Saxon terminology right now, but it's what I'm thinking. The next preposterous that is, you know, is hot on the heels of the last one. And so the person on the receiving end of that is palms to the air, like, what in the world am I to do? And there are those times when, frankly, it's easier to decide that divorce is best. It really is.
Yeah, it's like it's a catalyst that kind of pushes you over the.
It's easier to decide that it's best, and then Mark, they're still stuck with that question: can we do this?
Right.
Can we afford 2 domiciles? Can we afford 2 lives? As you say, will I be living in an underpass, or more likely in exactly 1/2 or less the lifestyle I've been in?
Yeah.
Which actually makes me chuckle, because you hear so many times people, I don't see any good reason to get married. Well, I tell you what. Yeah.
There are statistics.
Yes, there are.
That show that certainly married men do better financially and live longer.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you can stay married.
It's also cheaper to keep her.
I'm looking over my shoulder to be sure my wife is not playing with the knives right now. No, it's okay.
But it's there's that saying, it's cheaper to keep her. Maybe that's a little sexist. Maybe it's cheap them to keep them too.
That's pretty earthy.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't think through all of the consequences, and it never fails that. Sometimes I'll have a scorned woman or a scorned man that jumps to the conclusion of the divorce, and then they get into it and they don't realize how much this is going to damage them financially.
And the concept I talked about before, gathering at least information so you understand what consequences might look like people often enter this with really bad information. In other words, I've had people come to me and say, well, I understand I'm entitled to the standard of living in the marriage. I've been told that. It's like, well, that's the first half of it. Do you see what the second half of that says? No. If it's available, if you've got enough to be able to do that. But certainly in most of the people we see are living, if not beyond their means, at least close to their monthly expenses. And, that is the situation where you cannot possibly replicate that lifestyle for 2 households.
Well, and sometimes people come in and they're not sure. Do we want a divorce? Do we not want a divorce? What should we be doing? And I'm very happy when they come in to have that conversation, because you can have a facilitated conversation with a mediator. They would say therapy. I would say therapy is about difficult feelings, while mediation is about difficult decisions. And sometimes, if you're deciding what are we going to do with our relationship as far as our legal standing with one another, mediation is a great way to go, because you can bring in a Mark Hill and look at the finances. You can bring in a Scott Weiner and look at the emotional piece, and you can work with me and look at the legal piece and make a decision as to, number one, are we going to get a divorce or not? Or maybe a legal separation would be better for us. Or maybe we just need a postnuptial agreement where we can just kind of rewrite the Constitution for our marriage. Sometimes those things can work. And I've seen people actually keep their marriages together and save their marriages by just making decisions about tweaking and realigning certain things without having to do the full-blown D word.
Right. And I think that, again, going back to what I've been saying about information, people don't understand that they have those options. Many people just believe that I'm either married or I'm divorced. They don't understand the nuances of a post-nuptial or legal separation. And sometimes they will come in thinking that, as we were discussing before we started recording, Shawn, people will come in thinking that a legal separation will give them certain advantages and rights that may not necessarily be the case.
Yep. So it's important to talk to somebody that can advise you and give you information.
Right. Give you the information so you make the smarter decision.
Well, this has been an interesting conversation, guys, because we started out with just kind of talking a little tongue-in-cheek about the Valentine's Day and if it goes badly.
Right.
And it's turned into a discussion about, well, how do you know if it's really over? And I think that's important. You can jump to a conclusion, but I think the moral of what we've kind of talked about, you correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but the moral of this story is before you leap, think about it. Talk to people, get information.
and also know where your spouse is. In other words, this is a process, not
What
an
if she's
event.
like, yeah, I know where my spouse is. He's been at the strip club.
Yeah. Not quite
He's
what
been
I
with that
meant.
other woman.
Not quite what I meant in
I know
terms
what
of
you mean.
understanding the
We
process.
know that, Mark.
Well, but maybe our listeners don't.
I know. I
So-
deliberately confused everyone. I'm sorry.
So that's fine. It was amusing. We tolerate those things.
Yeah, good.
You know, the thing is though that I had cases where one spouse will come to me and say, "I've been thinking about this for 5 years." Well, when did you tell your husband? Last night. You know, and he is shocked and he's not there with you. Things haven't been great, but they haven't been great for a long time. And why would we change that? He can live with things as they
Right.
are.
I don't understand. It's been a week. Why is he dragging his feet?
Right.
You've had 5 years. And that's so common. Yeah.
Oh my.
See that all the time. I was meeting with a couple the other day and he just could not let go of this marriage. And she finally just had to say to him, there is nothing that you're going to say to me and nothing that you're going to do that's going to make me want to save this marriage. It is really, truly over. And I've thought about it, prayed about it, cried about it. It's over. But he wasn't there yet because he got the information a little later than she did.
Right. But there's also something, we work in alternative dispute resolution. And when you have the reluctant participant, one of the things we have to guard against as professionals is somebody using the process to delay. If I can just slow this down long enough, good Lord, I know she'll come to her senses and come back into the marriage. And so we need to be very cognizant of that and to disavow somebody that they can use the process to basically manipulate an outcome that they're hoping for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that when we, in our larger meetings, when we sense that happening, simply placing that on the table as a process that we recognize is a pretty good salve for that one. I mean, it's sad in the moment when it happens, but frankly, it saves them in the long run process. It saves them a fortune and it saves them being fooled by their own wishes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it is sad. There's no question about that.
And we're witnesses to these sad events.
Yeah.
And we need to be sensitive to them.
We are.
In terms of, most people complain this process takes too long. But Shawn, you were telling me, I think, about somebody who was, the couple who were saying, why are you pushing us? It's only been 3 years or so.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't believe how fast we were going. And could we please slow down? And it had been 3 years. Yeah. And we were really worried. I mean, the professional team was really worried that, oh, gosh, we're just not serving these people well. We're taking too long to get this done. And they didn't view it that way at all. So everybody's different.
I have a case right now where husband is very comfortable with the pace. Wife is fit to be tied. It's taken 3 times as long as she, in her mind, believed it would take, despite what every professional had told her. So,
well, gentlemen, we've done it again.
We have indeed.
We've talked each other's ears off about an important subject.
So how would they contact you, Shawn, if they decided they needed a dispute resolved?
Well, they would go to WeberDisputeResolution.com. WeberDisputeResolution.com. And we have a panel of mediators, and what we can do is connect them with the right mediator to help them resolve their dispute. And we're happy to do it.
And Scott?
Well, they would contact me by my telephone. And it's Scott Weiner, and I am a clinical psychologist and attorney, 619-417-5743. And I do answer my own phone. Mark.
You would go to my website. First of all, that kind of outlines how we operate and gives you a lot of information about process. We have a contact form. We have a phone number. The phone number rings at my home these days since offices are something we rarely visit. So please contact us and reach out and see if we can help. The website address is www.pacdivorce.com.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Three Wise Men of Divorce: Money, Psych, and Law. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with others who may be in a similar place. Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and focused on a positive, bright future. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Every family law case is unique, so no legal, financial, or mental health advice is intended during this podcast. If you need help with your specific situation, feel free to schedule a time to speak with one of us for a personal consultation.